Good afternoon. It's such a pleasure to be back with you all. My name is Michael Hyacinth. I am the host for the Glimpse of Africa author series, and today we get an opportunity to hear a very powerful story from the author Rebecca Deng, discussing her book, What They Meant for Evil, and how a lost girl of Sudan found healing, peace, and purpose in the midst of suffering. Rebecca, it's good to meet you.
It's nice to meet you too, Michael.
It's awesome to, as you and I were talking before we went live, just to hear your journey is just so powerful. I'd love for you to share with our viewers a little bit about yourself and perhaps what inspired this book.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, first of all, I think what inspired to write this book, I would really credit it first to some of my friends and college professors that have told me, have you ever thought of writing? And so over the years, they asked me, when I read your writing, you are a natural writer. And I'm like, well, how can that be? Because when I arrived in 2000 as an accompanied refugee child from Sudan, as a part of the Lost Boys of Sudan, most people don't know there were 89 girls that came, and I was one of them.
Wow.
And because I was an accompanied refugee child, I had to go through foster care system. So with that, you know, like when you just come, I came from Africa at 15 in a continent where I had a black privilege. I was never reminded of my skin or anything. I never even thought of it. There was war going on, but I never thought of my skin. And then coming here, and then, you know, I'm an immigrant, I'm a refugee, I'm an ESL student. There were just a lot of things. So when I start learning English, I thought, like, you know what, there is a part of Africa or part of our history that is not covered. Most of the time you see news covering only the brokenness, but before something break, it had to be put together. It had to be together. Yeah. So I was like, maybe one day I would write. And then it was one night, there was a news on TV about the U.S. border, the children being separated from their families. And it hit me at that time. I just literally had a flashback of me being ripped apart from my family and my village being touched down. And I grabbed my iPhone that night and wrote about like 25 pages.
Wow.
Just like coming back, my experience coming back. And then over time, I keep recording it. And then my hope was that I keep it as a journal, because when the war come to my country of Sudan, now South Sudan, all our materials and like our possession and belonging were burned down. And then I lost both of my parents to the war. So I have nothing about them beside what people tell me.
Okay.
So I was like, you know what, I need to write and record my story. Yeah.
So do you think that just your experience potentially was what they meant to be evil, because of you actually had to figure out your way out of this, and it was either evil would be your answer or it would either be positive?
Yeah. Well, for me, the title came, What They Meant for Evil, was really, it's based on the history of Joseph, where his brothers was like jealous about him and his gifted his skill, and they want to kill him. And later on, they were blessed through the brother.
Correct.
Well, the Sudan government that was persecuting my people from the south, you know, like we are Nubian people, all civilization, but then we were discriminated again as being different people, either based on economic, religion, or whatever, you know. If you go back and read the story of Sudan, you will learn all different kind of why the war came about. So being a tribal person that was, you know, discriminated and almost persecuted, where I had to run and was in a refugee camp. I was like, all of these things, these people or policies or international whatever war crime,
Right.
they were meanting evil against me.
Correct.
But because of God's grace or the Creator, I'm where I am now. So what they meant for evil. And then what they meant for evil too goes further than just those actors.
Right.
It goes to my inner self, like what I have almost meant for evil for myself, to like accept it, all of those names. Like you are immigrant, you are a refugee, you will never like graduated from high school, you are a girl, so your thing when you are when you had your first period is to get married. I have to combat every single thing that was meant for evil against me.
Wow.
So yeah, that's where the title come from too.
Wow, what a very powerful story. And I know you said you were one of the, how many girls a part of the Lost Boys?
89 lost girls that came.
Wow. Do you stay in touch with many of them?
I do actually, and one of my hope one day is really to really investigate where we are.
Wow.
I don't, because we were resettled all over the United States, wherever the family opened up their home. That's where we went. Some went to Boston. I came to Michigan. Some went to California. Some went to Philadelphia. So all over the place.
Yeah. So what is it that you would like for readers to take from this powerful book?
Yeah, so what I want the readers to take away when people see my book, what they meant for evil, is either they classify it as a religious book, or they see it as super heavy book, which it is. But this book have a lot of things. You will laugh, you will cry, and it cover just the expand of humanity, of human life. From my beautiful village being set in a.
And what was the name of the village? Do you remember?
The village was called Duk Padiet, and a small sub-village called Arwai Mayan, and it is in my book. So it is, the place is on Sirte, which is like the world second largest swamp in the world.
Really?
So it's green all year round.
Wow.
And when people see things like the scene in The Lion King where the wildebeest come, we heard that where there's a season the wildebeest come and there's all kind of wildlife, so green next to the Nile, lush green, and like growing up, I had 3 meals a day, and it was a simple village. We didn't have a school, but we have uncles and aunts and our cattle. I come from Dinka tribe, which are cattle herders. So my family had over 500 cattle, and you can imagine if a family have that, they're very wealthy.
You're considered wealthy, correct?
Yeah.
So is it, despite the tragedy and the chaos caused by the war, do you want to show us the beauty within the village that you were in as well?
Yes, and that's why in the beginning of my book I begin it with the opening with me living in my village and never imagining myself being in another place, to where the war come, to where I first heard of the word of refugee, which was at the border of Sudan, now South Sudan and Kenya, and we were told you are a refugee, and I'm like, no, I'm not a refugee. My name is Rebecca Deng. I will and count, because we were raised to count our genealogy to 10, and they're like, well, you are a refugee now. Not only are you a refugee, it will not even say you are a refugee, you will just be given a number.
Wow.
So you go from knowing your genealogy to being a number, and then living for 8 years in Kakuma refugee camp.
It's so interesting. I mean, it just goes back to the history of America, where many of our ancestors, were enslaved and having to now, during the Emancipation Proclamation, figure out where their journey is and who they are, and trying to figure life, to the current, existence of where we are in the state, in this country of America. I'd love for you to just share with us how we can get a hold of you, find out more information, because this book is so beautiful and it's inspiring, and it just invites us into your world, and we'd love to be a part of it.
Yeah, thank you. You can find me on Twitter, Rebecca Deng. Rivka is Rebecca in Hebrew, or on Instagram. I'm on Facebook. so you can find me in those places. I just want to add to the audio of what they meant for evil was narrated by C.D. La Loca. He's the leading voice in Lion King musical.
Really?
And he is a South African princess. So
That
I
is so
remember getting
awesome.
a phone call from New York, and it's like, this is C.D. La Loca. I'm like, C.D. La Loca? I don't know. It's like, do you know the Lion King? I'm like, that's my favorite. It's like, I'm going to narrate your book, and I just want to call you and connect with you, hear your voice before I go to the studio.
Wow.
So that is another cool thing. And also the book, What They Meant for Evil, got a star review from Publishers Weekly and was endorsed by Kirkus.
Kirk Cousins.
Yeah.
Wow.
Or Kirkus Review too, which is another
Okay.
book magazine. But Kirk Cousin, yeah.
Kirk Cousins. Did you get a chance to meet Kirk Cousins?
Yeah, we actually went to the same high school.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a small.
Yeah. It's a small world.
It is
Yeah.
from Sudan to Grand
To
Rapids.
Grand Rapids. To Holland first.
To
but now,
Holland,
yeah, to Grand
to
Rapids.
meeting Kirk Cousins.
Yeah.
Rebecca, it's a pleasure to meet you. I wish you all the best.
Thank
and
you.
I look forward to seeing this movie.
Yeah, thank you so much. I hope the movie come out.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.